Welcome in, everybody. What's going on? Welcome into the Week 10 Friday AMA. Week 10, already in November. Look at us, just going right through the season like it's nothing over halfway through. Whew, it happens fast. It all happens so quickly. What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Glad that you guys are all here. Drew C, happy Friday, y'all. Jamie, hit that like button. Man, we already got some questions in here. We already got a super chat. Mike kicks us off with a $5 super chat already. Thank you so much, Mike, for the support and the super chat. He's asking in a one quarterback trade Bucky for 226 first lottos, 101 to 106. He's got Gibbs, Bucky, Judkins, Travion, Hall, Monty. Also have 327 lottos. Man, I think I got to take it. I mean, to trade Bucky for two firsts, I think is already pretty good. And then the fact that you say that they're early firsts, um, you know, adds more confidence. Even though it's a one quarterback league, you might not get, like, if they end up being the 105, 106, you might not get as good of a player in a one quarterback league as you would in a super flex league because of the quarterbacks, right? But even still, to say that they're both non-playoff lottery picks with a possibility that maybe one of them turns into Jeremiah Love or even Jordan Tyson. Um, I feel like I got to do that. Like two firsts for Bucky Irving, I think is already enough for me to be willing to move off of him. Two early firsts is even better. Then you're saying that they're lottery picks and that you have a possibility of getting one of the top guys. Especially like if you just move from Bucky over to Jeremiah Love plus another first round pick next year, I mean, that would be incredible value. There's a world where Jeremiah Love comes in valued ahead of Bucky Irving in Dynasty next year. So I would probably, I would do this. I would do this trade for sure. Yeah. Give me the first on this one. And thank you for the $5 super chat, Mike. Thank you so much. Roster moves are being happening in my leagues. Added Chris Rodriguez. Scott Fishbowl. Connor, happy Friday, brother. Happy Friday to you. Happy stream day from Believe in Steven. Welcome in, everybody. All right, we have to go up to the top here. Seth, with the first question from this morning, are there any fantasy channels that you follow? What are your thoughts on the Fantasy Pros guys, BDGE, Ron Stewart, and Fantasy Football Advice? I really like Ray Garvin's channel for the most part. I would endorse all of these guys. I mean, I basically follow a lot of other YouTubers I've subscribed to their channels. Not to say that I'm necessarily like a hardcore listener of all of them, just because I don't have a lot of time to consume content while I'm also making content. But yes, I would absolutely go for all of those guys. I do throw in the Dynasty Nerds in there. I would throw in Matt Harmon, obviously at Yahoo. I would throw in, I mean, the fantasy footballers have been my go-to for years now. I mean, I started listening to them in 2016 when they were relatively new onto the scene. So, and I've just, stayed pretty religious to them. So I love the fantasy footballers for a fantasy football standpoint. JJ Zacharyson from a fantasy football standpoint, he dives into, I like his rookie stuff a lot too. A lot of his rookie modeling systems and processes behind how he does stuff kind of lent itself into how I was working through my marker system as well. So I would definitely endorse JJ Zacharyson for sure. I feel like Scott Connor wants to be the smartest guy in the room and talks down to other hosts. I mean, I won't, like, Scott is honestly, he is probably one of the smartest guys in the room anyway. Like Shane is phenomenal. I would never talk down on any one of them too, because I mean, we had Mannequin Chill on the DLF YouTube channel for a couple of years. Scott and Shane are great. I would endorse the DLF podcast as well with Ryan McDowell. Basically, like, there isn't really a fantasy football channel or outlet that I necessarily like really disagree with. I mean, there are people in the industry that I find myself opposing their takes more often than not. But I would say for the most part, everybody that I just listed, and then I would agree with your list, Dynasty/Fantasy Land. I like the domain guys as well from a Dynasty standpoint. I don't really watch Flock Fantasy. But man, mad respect to what Mason has done and the empire that he has built. Um, there's a lot of fantasy football channels that are doing really really great things, and I unfortunately just don't have enough time to like consume as much content from the fantasy industry, especially because whenever I get to like I like clock out, so to speak. I'm never truly clocked out, but um the other YouTube channels that I watch and stuff I don't necessarily want to hear fantasy football content all the time after I'm clocked out for the day. You know what I mean? Um Golf, other stuff like that. Those are the other content that I can also appreciate and enjoy and consume, or just catch up on what's going on in just regular football. Anyway, Antonio, hey Addy, contending in a 12-team Superflex PPR 1.5 tight end premium league, have Bowers, McBride, Gaston, and Ott in a tight end, but thinking of trading one of them for a wide receiver too. After Jefferson, I've been streaming Slayton, Coker, and Bourne. Wow. Reed's on IR, 4 deep at running back, 3 deep at quarterback. Also have a late first and 2 late seconds for trade chips. Sell a tight end. If so, which one? Or try to sell the picks first. Yeah, I feel like because my initial thought was, well, you have a wide receiver too with Bowers and McBride, but you can't start them in your actual wide receiver spots. So like if you're actually starting Slayton or Bourne or whoever in your like wide receiver 2 spot, then yes, I would like to move off of one of those tight ends. Um, I would like to keep Bowers just because it's Brock Bowers. Um, I would like to keep McBride and I would like to keep Gazden. I feel like honestly, there's probably um, the better answer here is which one of them not necessarily nets you the biggest reward, because I feel like that would probably be Bowers, but which one are other people more likely to trade for and give you the best wide receiver back? Because you might find yourself in a situation where this guy is like, all right, I'll give you um I just like Devonta Smith for Oronde Gadsden. You're like, okay. And then somebody else says, I'll give you Roma Dunze for Trey McBride. And you're like, all right. And then somebody's just like, hey, I'll give you Drake London for Brock Bowers. So then you kind of got to, debate between those three. Obviously, London would be the best in that example, but then you're also giving up the best tight end. Um, I I don't really have a clear cut answer for you in terms of which one you should trade, but it's kind of along those lines of I would probably rather be using these tight ends rather than selling your picks for wide receivers. I mean, you're also probably going to try to use those picks in rookie drafts to then draft wide receivers and hope that you hit on, a couple of those guys. But I also think, especially if you're contending, it would probably be beneficial for you to move off of one of these tight ends for an actual wide receiver to start in your actual wide receiver spot, especially assuming that you can't start all three of these guys and you're benching one of them. Um, that would be less beneficial. Or maybe it's Otten in a second gets you just somebody just to live with, and then you just kind of continue moving on. I think it depends on um, how many of these people that you can actually start, or what the market is for these tight ends in terms of what wide receivers that you can get back. So not a very clear answer, but hopefully that's at least my thinking of how I would go through trying to sell one of these guys. Connor with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Connor, for the support. I appreciate it a lot. He's 3-6 in a 10x11 Superflex tight end premium. We've got Allen, Goff, Hendo, ETN, London, BTJ, T-Mac, Waddle. Wow, you got some good names here for sure. And then you got McBride and Bowers and 5 firsts. Any advice to compete best next year? Draft well. That in a super flex, having Josh Allen, that's like check. Jared Goff is pretty fine. London, I can see why you're 3-6 right now. Because of Brian Thomas Jr. Waddle wasn't like phenomenal, but he wasn't phenomenal really with Tyreek Hill. So there's 4 weeks or something. You haven't had McBride, or you haven't had Bowers. And Henderson obviously hasn't done anything. ETN really hasn't done anything for the past couple of weeks either. and then BTJ just kills you. So I think, I mean, I really like. I kind of said it jokingly, but I also think that's kind of the right answer is just to draft well. Like I would not be doing anything with your team here in terms of like, oh, Tedero McMillan isn't producing yet. Let me move him over to somebody else who actually is. Or Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, that's kind of up in the air about what's going to happen with him. I would like to think that he has a better year 3, and maybe his production this year or lack of production is really just because of is a combination of a lot of things, but at the base of it might be some of the injuries that he had. So if he's healthy next year, he can get back to being maybe the wide receiver 1 top 5 ceiling isn't there for BTJ with Trevor Lawrence, but being like a really good wide receiver, like a top 15 kind of a guy, should absolutely still be in the cards for BTJ, um, assuming that they can figure out what's going on. And maybe he does need to just get healthy next year. Um, so I would probably, I would like to just draft well. You need some running backs. And if you have the 102, 103, 104, maybe you try to just see if you can get the 1.01 with one of those picks. Then that solidifies getting Jeremiah Love. So then you get Jeremiah Love. Then you can draft a Jordan Tyson or something like that. And then maybe there's another running back or two that you can get with one of those other top 4 firsts or one of the 2 later firsts. And then, because I think this running back class is actually going to be pretty solid. So there's going to be, I think, a decent amount of opportunity because I'm a big fan of uh, why am I blanking on his name? The Michigan running back. Is it Justice Haynes? Yeah, Justice Haynes. I don't know why I blanked on that so hard. I'm a big fan of him. So maybe you get him with one of your mid-ish firsts, we'll say. There's a couple other running backs in there that I think that you could just draft really well, and then you're right back into it next year with maybe a better Brian Thomas Jr., Tedero McMillan in year 2, a full season potentially of Jalen Waddle as the wide receiver 1. Obviously, we've got Allen and McBride and Bowers, so those guys are all locked down. I would not sell your firsts and seconds for proven production. Just like I wouldn't do that now. I don't really see the point in that because I think all of those firsts and everything can only get better. Um, so I don't see the point in doing that currently, especially because any of the proven production is probably going to be taken up by a lot of your contenders in your league. So I would just continue to move into next year, really dive into this rookie class and draft well. Honestly, I think that's truly the answer. Maybe you can play around with some of the seconds and stuff, but um, I swung and missed on in one of my leagues. I was like, I'm a hardcore contender, and I still am. I'm 6-3. But I paid my 26 first for Chuba Hubbard, and I did that in June or July. And so it re-emphasized in me to just not trade away first round picks for players that aren't really worth it, or maybe they are worth it in the best case scenario, but it's not really, it is what it is. And now obviously I've lost a ton of value by having Chuba Hubbard instead of my first. So I would rather just go through the offseason, draft rookies with those players. Maybe you move a second or two if you have the opportunity to, but I would just draft really well with those firsts and see where the next season takes you. Because obviously it wasn't your year this year, but you have the pieces; they're all there. And I think that if you add another couple good rookies, you could be right there again. And thank you for always a supporter from Dallas. Appreciate you, my man. And thank you so much for the $10 super chat as well. Hopefully we can get you some really good rookies. Like I said, if you can find a way to maybe solidify that 101 and then you get Jeremiah Love, I mean, there's a possibility that you get Love with the 102, but the 101 confirms it. You definitely have him then. Dale has a contender-ish move. Send Burrow for Love and Smitty. 3-6, but third in points for. Reasonable path to sneaking in the playoffs still. Yeah, it's not bad. I just don't know what Devonta Smith gives you. Like I don't know who your other quarterbacks are. To where whoever you're starting in your super flex league. I'm assuming that this is super flex and you haven't had Burrow, so you've had somebody else in your quarterback spot. I don't know if you have another quarterback in your QB2 spot. I just don't know what Devonta Smith is going to give you for the rest of the season. Um, that just scrolled down and saw I saw Caleb's uh hey, we can make some I had this idea the other day while I was in the shower. Shower ideas are always the best. Caleb, we can talk through some stuff. I think I got an idea that you would like on what we can do. I think we can do it. The people want more Caleb. But back to Dale. Um, yeah, this might be a situation where I just need a little bit more information on what your roster looks like. I mean, the fact that you're 3-6 doesn't sound. The fact that you're 3-6 doesn't sound phenomenal. Third in points for obviously is great. But we're kind of getting into crunch time here where we only have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We have 5 weeks left of the fantasy regular season. And you need to get to at least 500, if not slightly above 500, to probably make the playoffs. I'm assuming, because maybe if you're 7-7, maybe you can get in there. If you're 6-8, I doubt it. If you're 8-6, that's probably pretty good to get into the playoffs. So the fact that you're already 3-6, you're behind the 8 ball. That if you lose just like 1 or 2 more games out of the next 5, that's not going to cut it for you to even make the playoffs. So then you just traded away Burrow for Jordan Love and Devonta Smith. So I lean on the side of just keeping Joe Burrow here. But if there's more context, I could be swayed on what's going on. Grade the trade, my guy. Send away Jaden Daniels in a mid to late first for Lamar and an early to mid 27 first. Feeling pretty swell as a competing team. I mean, yeah, as a contender, to be able to move from Daniels to Lamar, I would rather have Lamar than Daniels in Dynasty. And all you had to do was just kick your first back a year. So you still had a first. And especially if you get an earlier first in a better draft class in 2027, that, would even be better. You just have to kind of delay your gratification on making that draft pick. But yeah, obviously as a contender, I think this is a pretty a trade here, to go from Daniels to Lamar, and then you might have honestly gotten the 2 better assets in this deal, in Lamar over Daniels, and then potentially an early 27 first over a mid to late 26 first. So you might have gotten the better deal on both of these. So yeah, well done. Absolutely, man. That's phenomenal. Would you trade Olave for Hunter to a more legitimate contender? My wide receiver room is BTJ, Ladd, Odunze, Olave, Debo. He also offered his 26 first, but would most likely be late. So it's either Olave for Hunter or Olave for 26 first. I would probably take Hunter in that situation. And yes, I would take Hunter as of right now from a rebuilder context. I know I just dropped my wide receiver rankings. I had Olave over Travis Hunter. But they were in the same tier. And the way that I do my rankings, I try to use it from more of a lens of a competing standpoint. Because it's hard to just say, like, in a vacuum, I would do this and this, because no team is ever in a vacuum. So I try to do my rankings more from a contender standpoint, competing in this season. So that's why Olave was ahead of Hunter, because Olave is going to play, and Hunter's not. But from a rebuilding standpoint, I probably would have it flipped, just given the age, Olave's potential contract situation, all that kind of stuff. And Hunter also just might be more talented. So I would take Travis Hunter over a late 26 first, and I would take Travis Hunter over Chris Olave. So yeah, I would take Hunter here. Vince in a 12-team start, 11 super flex. Quarterbacks are Lamar, May, and Love. Send Love and BTJ for Ibuka and Aronde. Competing team in second place with just Hawk and Barnett tight end, looking for a possible difference maker, half tight end premium. Boy, I think I probably would do this. I think I would take Ibuka over Love, just considering They're pretty close. And I know I just said that there's nothing really as in a vacuum. In a vacuum, I feel like I would take Love over Ibuka, but it's insanely close. But considering that you already have Lamar and Drake May, and you're never playing Jordan Love, you can upgrade from Ibuka to from BTJ to Ibuka, and then you get Oronde Gadsden as your tight end upgrade. I feel like I do this. I think I would take Ibuka and Oronde Gadsden. Um, and then if you well, Lamar's already passes by. Drake May is not, right? Uh, I think the Patriots buy is in like a week or two. Oh, they're week 14, of course. Um, but at least Lamar's already passes by, so then you don't have to worry about both of them still on bye weeks, and especially not having the same bye week. Just filling whoever in the superflex spot for Drake May in week 14, and then go win a championship. I think this is I think I'd take Ibuka and Oronde Gadsden here. I like it. I like it. Rob says, "Good morning, my guy. Good morning to you." Well, it's good afternoon for me. It's 12:20 now. 12-team redraft traded Olave and Quentin Johnston for Judkins because my running back room was Chase Brown and Kenneth Walker. Thoughts? Yeah, I honestly I don't mind it. You have Pittman, Jettas, Waddle, and Metcalf and Christian Watson as your wide receivers. So you've got, I mean, Jefferson, Waddle, and Pittman are going to be weekly starters. You're going to have no room to start Olave and Quinshon Judkins, especially with Olave playing with Tyler Shuck, and Judkins is just kind of, what is Quentin Johnston on a weekly basis. So being able to get Judkins, I think, is phenomenal for a redraft team. So I think this is great. I love this trade as well. Phenomenal trades, guys. Who's your go-to golf content? Good, Brian, Peter, Grant Horvat. A lot of the good golf content. Good is definitely number one. I do like watching Grant, especially now that he's paired up with Mickelson. And then I like me some Bryson, man. I just like watching, especially Bryson's. His break 50 stuff has been phenomenal. But then also his can I beat the course record on a public golf course. Just like watching him, and I think that's the cool thing about golf is that sport is like the closest. I feel like golf is the most relatable to watch like professionals play. Like obviously I have a massive appreciation for what everybody does because I can't do anything nearly as good as what they do. But it also, I feel like, is the sport that I can relate to the most because it's the one that I could be like the closest to being a professional in. You know what I mean? Like obviously I am nowhere near being a professional in any sport, but I feel like golf would be the one that I could be the closest in because you have those moments, right? Like when you're golfing and you like pipe that 300-yard drive down the middle, you're like, "Ooh." So that's what that feels like. Or like you sink that like 40-foot putt or you hit that approach shot to like 6 feet. You know what I mean? Like you have the moments and you would never under any circumstances have those moments. Like obviously like if you're playing football or pick up basketball with your friends or anything like that, like you could like make like a cool move, but like that's on like your friends, right? Where it's like golf is so much more individual and I think that's why it's really really fun. And why I also believe it's the closest that I could get to being a professional in any certain sport, with my 0.00000001% chance of being a professional in golf. Um, but it's the most relatable. So then watching DeChambeau like destroy public courses is just, it's so satisfying to watch. But then I sit there and I'm watching that and I'm like, I can do that. And then I go out the next day and I nowhere near that. But good Grant, and then Bryson would be my three for golf content for sure. What level of player would you flex Gadsden over going forward? Someone like Dobbins, Tet, Keenan. I have McBride at tight end. So I have been flexing Gadsden in a couple of redraft leagues because he's just been producing, man. And now I think I have him in an actual tight end spot. So one of the leagues I was starting Kraft and then flexing Gadsden. Now I lost Tucker Kraft. But I was starting Gadsden over players like Josh Downs. And I'm trying to remember who else are on my teams. I'll start him over I also had Harold Fannin on one of the leagues because I just picked him up and I don't want to drop him to give him to somebody else. But Josh Downs was one of them. I started him over Alec Pierce was another one as well. Um, and I think I started him over Jordan Addison one week. I think it might have been last week with McCarthy being back, or maybe the week before. Um, I can't remember, but it's like those level of players that I have actually started gassing over in my flex. So when you're debating between like Dobbins and Tet and Keenan, I probably would start him over Keenan. I think he's just a better player on that same offense. Um, the Dobbins is interesting. I probably would flex him over Dobbins. Obviously, you can't this week, but moving forward, probably, especially in situations to where they're not in good run matchups. Like Dobbins doesn't have a good matchup essentially. Um, so I would consider it over Dobbins. Tet that one's harder to predict. I probably would just to stay in the flames of Rondé Gazin. Like if Gazin just continues to put up like 5 for 60 on a weekly basis, essentially, and then has big games, like I probably would. I probably would start him over all of these players more often than not. Unless somebody just has like a phenomenal matchup, essentially. Like if Dobbins plays the Saints or the Titans or somebody like that, I'd probably play Dobbins, but over Keenan for sure. Tet probably more than likely. Help Dynasty League. My running backs are JT, Woody Marks, Mason, Brooks. Looking to trade for Rico using some wide receivers. Good idea. I'm a contender 6-2. I mean, with those wide receivers, it's absolutely a good idea. I don't think you're going to get anywhere close. I've seen Rico Dowdle get traded for a first round pick. So with those wide receivers, I think I would love it. Absolutely. Give all three of them for Rico Dowdle. I don't care. But I think you're going to have to pay more for Rico Dowdle. Uh, and depending on how much more, I probably still could do it, but I also could see myself like I would not pay a first round pick for Rico. If I was a contender, I would not pay it first. But you know, if you're Calvin Ridley or like Jalen McMillan in a second might get it done because McMillan has a little bit of name value and some youth and upside. So him in a second, that would be fine. Him in a second and a third, whatever it is, I would do that for Rico. Because you probably are going to have to pay more than the names that you've listed right here. Give them McMillan and Jordan Mason for Rico, or McMillan and Woody Marks for Rico. That could work. 12 team Superflex, half PPR, half tight end premium inbox offer. Rome, Gazin, a first and second, or BTJ. Is that Jalen or Tyler? Because that's going to be a major impact. I bet you just from reading this, it probably is Tyler. But I've got to be sure. Team is 7-11, borderline playoff ideals for potential counters. So Rome over BTJ. It's Tyler. I figured just because Gazin was in there and you got the first on that side as well. I would take the Rome side on this one. I think to even it out, I think the issue to even it out is that the first is almost on the wrong side. I don't view much of a difference between Warren and Gadsden, to be honest with you. I would take Warren over Gadsden straight up, but I don't view that much of a difference. But the difference between Rome and BTJ, and then you can cancel out the seconds so that it's Rome and a first for BTJ, essentially. That's essentially what I feel like this trade boils down to once you kind of cross everything out. And that first just feels like it's on the wrong side. I'd probably, if the first was on the BTJ side, I would probably take that side then. So it's probably just too much. If this was Rome, Gazden in a second for BTJ, Warren in 2 seconds, that would probably even it out. But as it stands right now, I think this is the Rome side pretty easily. Yeah. Is that the side you would be getting, or is that the side you're giving up? I think it's insane that they're adding a first onto the Rome side. In either direction, whether they offered that side do you for BTJ or whether um they're telling you to pay that. Adding that first in there is insane. Thoughts on Kyler long term? Couldn't move him earlier in the season. Definitely can't move him now. You'd be giving the Rome side. Sorry, we'll just real quick. Yeah, I think that's insanity to pay up, pay a first. That's crazy. I probably just wouldn't even entertain a like. You could tell him and just be like, dude, we just need to eliminate the first round. If you eliminated the first round pick entirely, I don't even know if I would take BTJ and Warren. That's how off it is. So I don't even know if I would entertain a potential counter. I would rather have Rome than BTJ, and then I would rather have keep my first, have an earlier second, and all of that just so I don't go from Gadsden to Warren. Man, it's not a good offer. It's not a good offer at all. All right, thoughts on Kyler long term? Can't move him now as a rebuild retool. I was thinking I just hold on to him until he's in a new situation, then flip him. I think that's essentially where we're at with Kyler. I think it's entirely possible that he has played his last snap for the Arizona Cardinals. Um, I've said a couple times, whether that was in the quarterback rankings or in one of these formats or something like that, but just like he could be the next reclamation project quarterback. Like he could find himself in a situation to where he's the next Daniel Jones, the next Sam Darnold, the next Geno Smith. I don't know where that situation necessarily lies. Maybe it's in like Pittsburgh. Like if Pittsburgh tries to give him a shot, um, maybe the Jets try to give him a shot. Um, Maybe the Panthers try to give him a shot. They just move away from Bryce Young and then just give Kyler money. And it's not like I don't think he would cost much. He would probably sign like a 1 year prove it deal of like 12 to $15, $15 million as a 1 year prove it deal to be kind of like that bridge starting quarterback. Maybe it's in Vegas if they wanted to move on from Geno and just give Kyler the shot. There's a couple opportunities, but it's not like they're phenomenal offenses to where you're like, man, Cleveland maybe could be another one. It would just be you're hoping that he just gets a starting role again somewhere. That's essentially what you're hoping for. So yeah, you definitely can't sell him now. I don't really have high hopes for him like super long term, and I would be in the same boat as you to where once he signs as a starter somewhere, and then maybe we start talking about a little bit of like he has this upside, he can be fixed. He's in a better offensive system than Gannon and Petzing. Um, like I could see there's a little bit of hope to where maybe you get like a second form in Superflex. So that's where I would be with Kyler for anybody that still has him. Trying to tank this year and next for picks to hopefully land Jeremiah Love and Jeremiah Smith and start pushing to contend for years after that. Think they're worth tanking a minimum of 2 years. I mean, I think Jeremiah Smith is worth tanking. um, the issue though is I think you probably have some competition to tank. So it's like depending on how well your team produces, um, then it might be more difficult for 2027. But if you have like a taxi squad and you could use the taxi squad loophole of keeping Jeremiah Smith on the taxi squad so they don't have his points on your roster for max points for or total points for or anything like that, then that could really help you compete and then you could have both. Um, but I mean, I definitely think Jeremiah Smith is worth a whole heck of a lot right now. And tanking for 2 years, probably worth it. Hollywood Smothers looks like a dog, almost certainly my round 2 to 3 target, depending on draft capital. Do I even know who that is? NC State's running back. 5'11", 195. Has a few good games. Didn't do well against Notre Dame. Under 4 yards of carry, but he's got some receiving. I can see it. This is the part where I just like I don't know college football well enough to know who these players are, but then I dive hard into the sheets and even into not so much like film, like all 22 film, but it's just like I got to start watching some of these guys play just so I know what they even look like. That starts at the beginning of January, and then we'll run through it. So Smothers has been added to the list. We'll see where he's at in the marker system. I need a new name for the marker system, by the way. Um, I don't know how people feel about it. Like it just seems like the marker system. That sounds so boring. And it doesn't sound like an actual name of something. Like I love like the domain guys have the bakery scores because the guy's name's like Ryan Bread. So he's like the bakery. So it's like I feel like I need a different name. Like Matt Harmon is like reception perception. Ooh, that's so clean. There's other stuff like that. JJ's is the Zap model. Is that what it is? I think that's JJ's name. So I feel like I need a name for the marker system. If anybody has ideas for that, let me know. Ken says in a 16 team, one quarterback, two super flex. So quarterback is a big premium. Oh, that's for the Kyler one. Yeah. Yeah, I think you definitely probably can get more than a second. Again, you need him to just get a starting job, essentially. A starting job with hope for him to maybe like if he goes to Vegas, we'll be like, oh, he's throwing to Brock Bowers. Maybe they drafted a wide receiver. Um, that would be great. Oh, he goes to the Jets. He's got Garrett Wilson. Maybe they also drafted a wide receiver. He goes to the I don't really want him on the Browns. If he goes to the Steelers, we're like, oh, he's got DK Metcalf. There's potential that we could get some hope again if he's in a new situation, in a different offense for sure. What are your thoughts on Mike Evans? Toast. What is his trade value? I think he's pretty much toasted. He's probably worth like a third right now. I probably wouldn't pay that for Mike Evans at this point. But I think, 'cause honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he retires. Like, truly, I would not be surprised if he retires at all. And I've said that for months now. Like, basically, since they drafted Ibuka, I'm like, hey, Evans could retire. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Now he's injured. I would not be surprised if he just calls it. Because I don't know if he would sign anywhere else. And I don't know, like, it would probably be a cheap contract for him to come back to Tampa. I think it's a third round pick, honestly. I'd feel better about Evans, or I feel better about Tyreek than Evans, honestly, even though Tyreek's injury was way worse. I think that Evans is closer to being done than Tyreek. So it's a third round pick, but I probably wouldn't pay it. Oh, Dale, I just now seeing this. Knicks, Dimes, Achan Swift, Nico T. That's a good team. So you're starting Knicks and Dimes anyway. Yeah, I don't think I'd do this. I think I would still just keep Joe Burrow. Because I don't know, like Love doesn't feel like a tremendously better upgrade over Knicks or Daniel Jones in your quarterback spot. And then Smith, you're never playing Smith over any of these wide receivers. So I feel like I would just hold on to Joe Burrow. That's this trade almost does nothing for you in terms of an actual impact in your starting lineup to then try to compete. Let alone than the fact, as I mentioned, that if you lose one or two more games over the next 5 weeks, you're probably not in. And then you just lost Joe Burrow. So I would just hold on to Joe Burrow, and you might get into the playoffs anyway with this lineup. I mean, Bo Nix didn't do anything for you last night, but Achan's a top 10 running back. Lamb's a top 5 wide receiver. T's great with Flacco now. Waddle's like a top 12 wide receiver without Tyreek. Nico should be a top 12 wide receiver, so he has that upside. Swift is like an RB2. Like, this is a really good team that I just don't think gets actually impacted by moving Burrow for Love and Devonta Smith right now. How are you feeling about the 2026 draft class so far? I feel good about the first round, and then after that gets a little bit dicey. But I think that as we dive into the class even more, I run through my marker system and everything like that, and we see what it is. There's always going to be players that I'm gonna, fall in love with in the second, third, and fourth rounds that are going to take dart throws on. I've said for months now that I think the 2026 class has been underrated in the dynasty community because we are looking past it to 2027. And I mean, it's not to say that I think 26 is going to be better than 27, especially because I think 26 also hinges on a handful of players that are early declares for 2026 that if they decide to stay, that would hurt 2026 and then also really help 2027. So if we get, most of those players to declare still in 2026, um, with the firepower that we already knew we had coming in with, Love and Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, Fernando Mendoza looks really good. Dante Moore looks pretty good. We've got did I say Jordan Tyson already? I like Justice Haynes a lot. There's a few other running backs I really like. That I think we have a solid core for like a first round. Then after that, we'll just see what kind of happens. And I feel like most draft classes don't really have depth in general. I feel like that's relatively rare. It takes a really good class to have depth that really significantly goes into a top 20 or so. Like if we have a top 15, then that's pretty good. Or just like a top 10, I feel like is like an average class. Having a top 15 is pretty good. And then if you have like anything that goes down into the mid to late second, that's a phenomenal draft class. And they're really rare. But 2027 has the possibility to do that. 26, I think, is just going to be like an average class. I think that they're going to be a lot closer to 2022 potentially, or even like a 2019. I think we'll have some names, and I think that the class as a whole has been undervalued for the most part. It's starting to pick up steam, I think, just because we're getting closer. Um, and college football season we're into November now, so we know who a lot of the good guys are, and now they're being talked about, and I think they're starting to get hyped up. So I still think it's undervalued a little bit for 26 first, especially as teams are trying to compete and sell those picks. Um, but I think it's going to be a solid class. I think most people are going to be happy with the player that they draft in the first round. But I don't think it's going to be a good enough class that had you already sold off of 26 firsts in order to compete, or if you moved off of 26 to 27, I don't think you're necessarily going to be upset about that either. Because the like I said, the class I think is going to be solid. But if you're just like, I missed out on Jaden Ott, you're just like, oh well, you know. So I think it'll be good, but not great. Connor says it's going to be challenging to get that 101. Would you move up? Would you give up a 106 second, third, and fourth, or some other combo? What is the max I guess you'd be willing to pay for 101 with my picks? Yeah, I think if it was essentially like either the 104 in a second or something along those lines with your two other firsts that are a little bit more mid to late, and then a second, third, and whatever. I think that's a pretty solid trade. I probably would not give up more than that. Like if it was the 107 or 108, we'll say, and then 2 seconds, I'd probably be like, that's probably a good deal still to get Jeremiah Love, but I don't know if I'd be willing to do that because I still think there's a possibility that you get Jeremiah Love at the 1.02. It might not be a good possibility, but it's there. Just depending on what the other guy needs or wants or likes. If it was essentially just like a second to move up from one of your mid firsts, I would do that. Or second and third. I don't really care about thirds and fourths, especially as I just talked about a whole class that I'm not really sure what the depth is. So, yeah, I think something along those lines is basically what I'd be looking to do. Anything more than that, I just don't think is worth it. Olave and Pitts for Gadsden and Addison. I'll take Gadsden and Addison on this one. Redraft or dynasty, doesn't matter. Buy Apple Pie, 12 team zero flex, start 11, 6 point per touchdown. Give Allen, get Dart, Dak, Downs, Quentin Johnson, and Marks. What the heck? Is this dynasty? I don't think I could do it. And this isn't it doesn't matter what format this is, I can't do this. I'm assuming it's Dynasty just because it's a super flex start 11. I don't no, just give me Josh Allen. I get it with Dart and Dak in there, but none of the other stuff necessarily matters. I'd rather just have Josh Allen. Give me Josh Allen. Cheap players for thirds to have in a flex for rest of season. I'm down Neighbors, Hampton, Hunter, Burrow, and Pearsall. Have gotten nice flex plays from P. Ryan, Hutch, Zacchaeus to keep me right in the playoff race. Nice. Um, let's take a look. I don't have the names off the top of my head, so I gotta pull up. Keep trade cut. So we're trying to find like third round pick range. I gotta scroll. All right. This is gonna be fringe. I don't know if these guys are necessarily third rounders. Keep trade cut says they're not necessarily like they're like mid to late seconds. But this could be a place to kind of start. Would be Dobbs, Jaden Reed. If you can get Ayuk for a third or a couple of thirds, that could be cool. Christian Watson may not be bad. Alec Pierce. Again, I don't know if these guys are necessarily worth thirds or not. I'm just kind of scrolling down through cheaper names. Keenan for sure. Ramondre, I still like buying Ramondre just for the rest of the season. Isaiah Pacheco, since the Chiefs didn't trade for anybody. Parker Washington, he might still be third round cheap given the fact that they traded for Jacoby Myers, but I still think that Parker Washington can be good for the rest of the year. Aaron Jones, if you wanted to try like an Isaiah Davis to like throw him in there just to see if anything happens with Brees Hall, like injury wise, that may not be a bad idea. Same goes for Tank Bigsby. Mooney and Bateman are kind of like we're really starting to get into like third round range. Maybe Calvin Ridley. Maybe maybe boy. Darius Slayton. Nick Chubb. I'm just scrolling through. Dimey Brown might not be a terrible name. We're into like these guys are just not going to help you compete now. Those would pretty much be the names I think that I would be trying. I'm trying to see if I missed anybody. I don't think so. Chris Rodriguez might be kind of taking over for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt because Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's actually not that good. But they're going to have Mariota in that offense. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Devin Singletary maybe, or like Tyron Tracy. Chris Godwin. I don't know if you can get him for thirds, but people kind of seem to be lower on him. And he should be back this year. Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, guys like that. The third round range is difficult, but those would probably be some of the names that I would go after. I want to sell Worthy. I'm not competing this year, but I have a solid team. I expect to contend next year. Thoughts on packaging him with the second to move into the 26 early mid first? Absolutely, man. Any way that you can get off of Worthy for a first round pick, I would absolutely be doing. And I would like to move Worthy instead like any other running back or more veteran wide receiver targets. I'm assuming that this is like off of Worthy. Like if you could, where's Worthy at? In probably pretty low. Michael Pittman, I like Ricky Pearsall still, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Devontae Adams, of course. I might even consider like a Khalil Shakir kind of a player, honestly. Um, those would be the names like in and around where Worthy is now. And then maybe if you add the second, I mean, if you can add a second to Worthy and get to Jalen Waddle, I think that would be absolutely tremendous. Or T. Higgins, that would be tremendous. Those are essentially the names that I'd be, or maybe you buy low on BTJ. I don't know. That'd be crazy if you can Worthy in a second for BTJ. You might be able to get that done. Um, so yeah, those, but yes, I would absolutely take this first round pick if you can get that done. I also, sorry, Connor. I did see there was a decent number of tight ends that I just saw for like that could be worth a third, and they're probably cheaper, way cheaper to buy production as well. I do agree with this. I wasn't necessarily naming tight ends for third round production, but I would agree with this with Ertz, Goddard. I would add in um, Juwan Johnson or Luke Musgrave, Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews. Maybe you could try to buy lower on Brenton Strange while he's still injured right now. He's coming back, right? When will the Jaguars tight end return? Um, that this article was the most fluffiest article I've ever seen in my life. He's going to return at some point later on. How long has he been on IR? Like a month now, right? Because it was around like week 5 that he got placed on IR. Yeah, this was a month ago that he was placed on IR. So Strange maybe could be another one too. But yeah, I do like the idea if you wanted some actual production, like more of a floor, the tight end spot, flexing tight ends might not be a bad idea. Was this the first? Nope, this one. Flex 2 and guillotine, so no busts. PPR, half tight end premium. Olave versus Carolina, Warren versus Atlanta. Aaron Jones, injury question mark, Wandale at the Chicago Windy game. If I think to me it's Warren and Jones. I do like Wandale though. Jones was actually my sneaky start for the 4 for 4 side for running backs this week, and then Paulson also agreed with it. I believe he said he wrote him up in his normal article that he writes up like 30 guys. So he wrote up Aaron Jones in that article too. If Jones is healthy, I would play him against Baltimore. I like Tyler Warren. Like Warren, I feel like has a better floor than Olave and might have a better floor than Wandale considering how bad the weather is in that game. I think if you didn't want to get Olave is probably last on this list just because like Carolina's pretty good against defense or pass defenses. I don't like Tyler Shuck as well. So like it's not in terms of like me being down on Olave, it's me being down on Tyler Shuck. Just from a guillotine like confidence standpoint in Shuck's second game of his career. So I think he's last on the list. Jones and Warren are 1 and 2. And then Wandale would be a nice 3 that if you didn't want to play Warren or we find out that Aaron Jones is inactive, which I don't think he will be, Wandale I think is a solid start. Let's look at this this is in a full PPR flex. Wandale is flex 39 for Paulson. Tyler Warren is flex 51. Aaron Jones is flex 78. So Paulson would actually say Warren and Wandale. Well, where's Olave? Olave's 30. So Paulson would say Olave and Wandale. Man, I don't know. Like Olave, at least he has it's a lot better without Rashid Shaheed. Wandale, I do think is a solid start. The windiness scares me a little bit because both those teams can win on the ground, um, or at least Dart can win more on the ground as well. Um, Tyler Warren, I still think is even though it's Atlanta's defense. Atlanta's defense is weird. Atlanta is weird. And then I still do like Aaron Jones, but if you don't want to mess around with the injury, I don't mind that either. I don't really don't think I gave you an answer. Paulson would say Olave and Wandale. I do like Wandale as well. Um, but I like Warren and Aaron Jones. I'm going to tell you that Paulson would say Olave and Wandale, and I trust John Paulson. Evan, with Daniels down, who do you start this week? Mariota, Brissett, or Shuck? I would start Mariota. I'm worried about Brissett against Seattle, and I just do not like Tyler Shuck. So it's not to say that I like Mariota this week against Detroit, but Mariota was my quarterback sneaky start for 4 that Paulson also signed off on. And if we were just looking at the quarterback rankings, I believe he said that he had Mariota the highest. He's got Mariota and Brissett tied for the same number of fantasy points. Mariota has a slightly easier matchup against Detroit. And so I think also Mariota gives you rushing floor. So I would start Mariota. 10-team Superflex start 10, half PPR, full tight end premium, rebuilding in a race for 101. 4 first, 2 seconds, 227 first, and 1 second. Give Garrett Wilson for a first and Cam Scadaboo. Nah, I'd rather keep Garrett Wilson. I'm assuming this is try to get the points off of your roster, but I would just keep Garrett Wilson over a first and Cam Scadaboo. Yeah. Yep. Garrett Wilson. How much would you be willing to pay for BTJ at this point if you didn't need immediate production? More than a first. Seems like 3 months ago he was a borderline 3 first on valuation. I would pay if the basis of the trade was like a late first, and then you added something in there. That's probably the most that I would pay for Brian Thomas Jr. right now. Even then, I don't necessarily love it, but I think that's a solid price to say like a late first and some piece for BTJ. I think is fine right now, but that's probably the most. I wouldn't pay 2 firsts, so first and a second, first into something. That's where I would go. Would you trade Tet for Devontae Adams and Jalen Warren in a 12-by-11 top team, but flex spots really weak? Trade activity is really low in this league. No, I would keep Tetterella McMillan. This is a dynasty move that I would rather keep Tetterella McMillan than lose dynasty value for a win now move like this to go to Adams and Warren. I'd rather keep T-Mac. 12-team PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown. Start Baker or Darnold, and then start 2 of that whole group. Waddle and Judkins are the start 2. That one's easy for me. Then Baker or Darnold. My gut says Baker. Paulson says Baker as well. He's got Baker as the QB5, projected for 2.5 fantasy points more than Sam Darnold as the QB13. Just so if we were curious here, Waddle's the flex 33. Judkins has got to be higher. Judkins is the flex 24. So 23 and 34 are the ones to beat. Rashad White's in there at 29, so he's technically above Waddle. I don't like that. And Henderson is at 43, so he's below Waddle. I would rather play Waddle than Rashad White. Because I don't think Rashad White does well on the ground, and maybe he has a few receptions, but I think Waddle's just going to do more against Buffalo in a pass-heavy game script. Give me Waddle and Judkins for the 2, and then Baker. My first time doing a hard rebuild, took over an orphan in 2025. I'm tanking in 25 and 26. I'll have the 26-101. 3 totals, 26 first, and 4 total 27 first. Nice. Help on how to deploy my 326 first. 2 should be early, 1 should be late. Do I make the picks or try to use them to grab even more 27 first? I would I would make the picks for the first two. And then I feel like I don't have enough information on the class or which pick that necessarily is to know what to do with that late first right now. If you wanted to trade it for 27 first, I don't mind that. I wouldn't add to your 26 first and then trade for a 27 first. If you get 27 first plus, that'd be great. Um, but like I feel like people, and this I'm not pointing you out specifically. I just feel like this is a trend I see. People try really, really to like overthink themselves really hard on what to do with first round picks or just picks in general. Like just make the pick. Like I feel like that there's a lot more upside in trying to hit on the rookie, the act by putting the pick into it, turning the pick into an actual player. There's just way more upside there. Because rookies rarely lose just in general, they rarely lose value, but they rarely lose a ton of value without like major injury or something like that, especially first round picks. Uh to where you can't just recoup that a similar value the next year. Um so I think people just try to outsmart themselves too much on what to do with first round picks and how to try to optimize them and blah blah blah. I would just make the picks like that. I would just draft rookies, see what you've got in them. Maybe you hit on them, and that just speeds up. And then continuing to kick the can down the road is just how you perennially rebuild by trying to optimize what to do with first round picks and stuff like that. Some people will say just you know keep some of them, trade some of them, or just like I'd rather just have shots on rookies. Maybe that's me having a little bit more confidence in like how I draft rookies and my process on evaluating rookies and stuff like that. Like I feel like I have pretty decent odds of like turning those picks into productive players, right? Um, but I still think at the end of the day, it's just better just to just draft rookies. Just draft rookies. That's essentially the play. Because like if that pick if you did that this year and that pick ended up turning into like the 109, 110, that could have been Emeka Ibuka. That could have been Tyler Warren. You know, I mean, it could have been Jackson Dart. That late pick, just in this class, could have been a player of that caliber. I mean, maybe it could have been RJ Harvey, but RJ Harvey really hasn't lost value. Travion Henderson has not lost value. Maybe a little bit, but it's not like they're all of a sudden like Jonathan Brooks, I think, is rare. A player like Jonathan Brooks to have just tanked so hard in 1 year is rare for first round picks. Um, Quentin Johnston, I think, is rare. Jalen Rager is more rare. You more often than not, I think you find players that are like Zay Flowers, where they're just solid. Where you find players that are like Henderson, where they're still upside, but they're just solid. Um, guys like that, to where the value for rookies generally is plus or minus of plus or minus like 10 to 15% of their value. But there's also the upside that, like I said, you drafted Ibuka, you drafted Tyler Warren, you drafted Jackson Dart. Do that again in 2026, and then you can do that again in 2027, and you've got a super team. Just just draft the rookies, in my opinion. Lost Tucker Crap. I still have Andrews and Loveland. Should I trade Andrews and Pittman for Gazdin and Devonta Smith? I have Rasheed, Amon-Ra, and Ibuka. Yes, I would do this. Get off of Andrews, move over to Gazdin, Pittman, and Devonta Smith. Dynasty wise, I'd rather have Smith. Pittman obviously is producing better, but I don't view much of a difference between the wide receivers. You're also not starting either one of them, assuming that you can't start more than three. So you're going to start those three every single week. But you get a massive upgrade at the tight end position. I would take Oronde Gadsden here. If you're competing, I would take Matthew Stafford over Bryce Young. If you're not competing, I would take Young over Stafford. It's just a rebuilder versus a contender thing. So depending on what side you are or what direction your team's heading in, that's the quarterback you would take. Jeffrey says, hello, I have May, Genti, Javante, Brees, Amon-Ra, Nico, Warren, Tet, BTJ, Shakir. Wow. Currently 7-2. I can see why. Should I upgrade somewhere or stay pat? Um, I think it's gonna be hard. Like the upgrade that I could see is I don't know if this is dynasty or redraft. Um, my thoughts say dynasty because in a redraft to then have Genti, Amon Ra, Nico, and BTJ. um, I you were thinking of trading Brees and Nico for Waddle and Chase Brown. Okay, so we're in a similar boat. I was looking at how can you upgrade Nico Collins. I like Nico Collins a lot, but if you really wanted to push, I feel like with the fact that you have Nico, Tet, and BTJ and Shakir, that you could try to consolidate just to get a better wide receiver. I don't think I like the Brees and Nico for Waddle and Chase Brown trade as much. Um, but I think you're in the right mindset in the ballpark for what you should be trying to do. I was thinking, could you trade like Nico and Shakir or Nico and uh like does Nico and Woody Marks get you I'm trying to even think of who you would even go to. I don't really want anybody in the same tier as Nico Collins. Like I wouldn't really try to pivot him over to like a Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr. or uh or Lad. Lad could be fine. Um they all just feel like Odunze, they all feel similar. Like they all have an issue, right? To where like Nico they all have an issue, but they all have the upside. So Nico's like it's fine. So I was thinking like how can you get to London or Ibuka or Rice? Those would be the names that I would like. How can you get to them if they're even available to trade? But how can you get to them? Is it by adding like Nico and BTJ for one of them and just like another backup? Could you do that? Um, maybe you use you have the fact that you have Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland. Could you use Loveland as an upgrade piece if the other person needs a tight end? Um, that those are along the lines of what I'm thinking. Mike, I just saw your super chat. I'm sorry. Uh, but yeah, that's I think we're on the same wavelength essentially of like what can you do with Nico Collins. I'm not really worried about upgrading off of Javante or Brees, but I think it's Nico. It's or not necessarily Nico. It's just a more impactful wide receiver too. So maybe it's not trading off of Nico, but it's moving off of Brian Thomas Jr. and Colston Loveland. Does that get you, you know, a Rashee Rice or a Drake London or somebody like that? So it doesn't necessarily have to be Nico, but he might be the more valuable name of this list. Him or McMillan, one of the two. But I think you're there. I wouldn't do that Waddle deal specifically, but I think you're in the right ballpark. Oh, sorry, Mike. I just said Mike with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. Sorry, I'm just now getting to this. Start 2 PPR, no tight end premium. Hall, Monty, Kincaid, JMO, and Henderson. Start 2 in a PPR league. Let's see. Before I consult John, I don't love Hall's matchup against Cleveland. I do like Monty's matchup. I actually just bet on him before this show for a touchdown and for 40. What did I have? 47 yards was his over. Kincaid feels like a good start, but is he a better start? I don't really want to start JMO. He just feels too inconsistent. Henderson is, I think, a solid start. He was John's sneaky start of the week for running back in our video on 4 for 4, and I liked it too. I think for me, I would go Henderson and Hall for the touches because it's a strong likelihood too that it might just be Jahmyr Gibbs week against the Commanders or they just pass a ton. So this is in a full PPR. I'm in the full PPR. So Brees is flex 35. Montgomery is flex 50. Henderson is flex 43. So he's got Brees and Henderson so far as his leaders. Kincaid is 74. That's down. And Jameson is flex 65. So Paulson would say Brees and Hendo. They're only separated by a couple tenths of a point in projections. But Monty's not too far behind Henderson either. So it's 13.4 projected for PPR for Brees, 13 for Henderson, 12.6 for Monty. Then the other two are down lower in the 11s. So I said Hendo and Hall is my gut. Paulson backed that up. He said Hendo and Hall with his projection. So I would go Henderson and Brees Hall. Where did I leave off? Lonely Stoner. Nope, we already did this one. Seth with yes. Yes, I did do this one, right? Yes, I did. I thought I was going crazy. Seth, I have Ferg, Aronde, Mason Taylor, and Ertz. Should I trade Ferguson for something else or keep him? Ertz is no value in my league, so I'm stuck with him at his best ball. I feel like just for the fact that it's best ball, I'd rather probably just have all. I mean, unless you traded Ferg for like a wide receiver that could then have a shot to crack the starting lineup in a best ball league, like Ferguson for like a Troy Franklin, maybe somebody like that. Like I don't think that you need to trade Jake Ferguson, but if something were to come along to where somebody needed a tight end and you got another running back or wide receiver back, and it was a good trade, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it because you have Aronde Gadsden and Zach Ertz is a floor guy and the upside of Mason Taylor as a rookie who could grow more from a dynasty perspective. So like I don't think he's an active sell, but if it made sense, sure. Thoughts on Torrey Horton after the Shaheed trade? Yeah, I think honestly, I've seen some people hypothesize it, and I don't necessarily disagree that Shaheed is coming in to replace Cooper Kupp. And that Torrey Horton will still have his role in like 11 personnel and of course on special teams because he's phenomenal on special teams. But this might be more of a view on how they view Cooper Kupp as a not really he's injured, but then also not dynamic, obviously. And it pairs Shaheed back with Clint Kubiak, and Shaheed is a free agent at the end of the year, I believe. Right? Like that was the whole point of why like he was even on the trade block. I mean, other than the fact that he played for New Orleans, but yes, he's on a 1-year deal. So there is, I mean, he plans to be with the Seahawks long term. So he says, "I'm here to stay," everything like that. He plans to sign an extension in the offseason. So we'll have to see. But I mean, there is the possibility that maybe he's not extended and then they move forward with Torrey Horton. But I also think that there's a good possibility that Horton just grows into being not necessarily grows, but you know, he could still just be the same player that he has been. And it's not to say that like injuries can't happen or anything like that. My initial thought was, of course, that I was like, oh, Torrey Horton's dead. Why would you trade for Shaheed? You got Torrey Horton or you got Rashid Shaheed at home, you know, with Torrey Horton. But I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing for Horton's like dynasty value. It's just, you know, the Seahawks want to build out a really, really good offense, and Horton might just be in the same role that he's in right now as a, you know, as a big play dart throw kind of a weekly starter. And that kind of sucks because that means that he can't grow into being like an actual like trustworthy playable guy. But I don't think it necessarily hurts him from a like what he's been doing already. Like I think it's pretty obvious that Torrey Horton belongs in the NFL, and should be a starter for you know the Seahawks. And I think that they also see that too. So maybe that they just start running 11 personnel more just to have a lot of dynamic wide receivers just all over the place with JSN and then Shaheed then Horton. So I think he's still fine, just maybe not reaches the upside, especially if Shaheed stays there, that Horton could have. 12-team tight end premium +1. Ibuka and Otten for Fannin and a first. I'm taking Ibuka. Nah. Not enough. I'll take Ibuka in this one because the first could be whatever. Fannin is nice in a tight end premium, but it's a Mecha Ibuka. I'll take a Mecha Ibuka. 14 team Superflex half PPR contending. Dowdle's the only startable running back. Gave Kraft and Golden in a third. Got Kyron, Aaron Jones, Rashad White, and Ertz. Yay, nay, meh. I like it. It's very win now. But I do like it. Like I like Kyron Williams. I like Aaron Jones, and Rashad White's a good backup. We'll see. Maybe he signs somewhere else in the offseason because he's a free agent. Ertz is fine. You gave up Young and upside, which I don't usually love, but I also think like getting Kyron Williams is pretty solid here. So if you win the championship, you're not going to be mad about it. But I also think even if you lost in the first round, which I'm not putting that on you, knock on wood. But if you didn't win the championship, I don't think you are upset about having made this deal in the offseason because you still get Kyron Williams. And I think he's just a good asset to have. So yeah, I think it's okay. It's not like a yes, this is great, but I also don't think it's bad either. I think it's solid. Matthew with the $5 super chat. He says, "See earlier message." I did see that you threw in some messages in here. Let's take a look. Thank you so much for the super chat. And I love the picture of your dog, by the way. Bad 8-1 team with talent, young talent, and 12 teams to reflect start 10 half PPR, rushing and receiving first downs, and extra tight end premium. Wow. Scadab is the only top 50 running back with Burrow and Lamar at quarterback, 226 mid to late firsts. Would you use picks to address running back or quarterback? You had another one. Don't want to break up my wide receiver tight ends, Jefferson, London, Marv, Hunter, Ayuk down, Gadsden, and Fan. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty great wide receiver and tight end room for sure. So we're looking at, would you use picks to address running back and tight end? Probably. I mean, I hate to say that it's like early to really hone in on what your picks should be, like which rookies you are absolutely taking right now. I mean, we don't know where the picks are just in your league in general, and then at least I don't, as of this moment, have an exact handle on which players are necessarily even in that range. So I do apologize for that, but it's also part of the dynasty process and the rookie process of just staying liquid and staying fluid on what you're doing throughout your entire process and eval. Then the NFL draft can also be a heavy impact as well, to maybe really bump up or bump down some players based on draft capital or even landing spots to a degree within tiers. That honing in on what positions or specific players your picks should be this early is, I would say, is not beneficial. But if the opportunities present themselves to then get yourself a really good draft play rookie to get yourself a really good rookie at those positions in the draft, I would not be opposed to it. This seems like a definitely a class that has upside at the quarterback position, especially if you can identify which players are necessarily going to be good. And maybe that's a post draft thing. Maybe we need to wait for the NFL to tell us specifically how they feel about which one of these, about all these quarterbacks that are going to be declaring essentially. Like I doubt you get Fernando Mendoza. Maybe you get Dante Moore. Maybe you get Lenore Sellers. Maybe you get John Mateer. Maybe you get, I don't know, whoever else could be in that kind of range. Running back position, I like I said, I think that there's some pretty solid running backs in this class. Mid to late, again, that depends on who even declares, but then depends on draft capital as well. So I feel like I didn't do a good job of answering this with the fact that you sent a $5 super chat that I'm very thankful for. But I mean, yeah, if running backs and quarterbacks are there for your picks, you have a need for sure. But I also would tell you to like not Oh, keep picks or trade for a player like Jonathan Taylor. There's a second question. Um, I would not trade both those picks for Jonathan Taylor. Um, just because like you're you are 8-1. But I mean, I'm just never the type of person that is going to trade multiple first round picks for a running back. That's just not how I play Dynasty. Uh, and especially like I said, like you have the potential to draft multiple running backs with those picks, and you're 8-1 already with the wide receiver room that you have and the running back room that you have. I would rather trade, one of your second or your thirds or anything like that. Like, can you go get like Ramondre Stevenson for one of your thirds? Can you go get a uh can you get Rico for a second and a third? Can you use one of those firsts? And does that one first get you Josh Jacobs or even like Derrick Henry even for like a first? I'd rather have Derrick Henry for one first than Jonathan Taylor for two. Um, I just think that there's at the running back position specifically, there's just so many different ways that you can just acquire cheap enough assets to compete. And you're 8-1 already. So like if you have a first round bye, that's going to be incredible for you that you only really need to focus on week 16 and 17. Um, so no, I wouldn't use both those picks to go get like a Jonathan Taylor. I would not combine both of them and then turn them into one running back asset. I would rather either break them up to see if you can get two running backs with either like a first or a second, and then or a second individually, a second and a third, anything like that. Uh, then just package them both for just one player. Because if you package them both for that one player, and then that one player gets hurt, you're screwed. You're screwed anyway. So, which I get like that's just how I play Dynasty. That's my aversion to risk. That is my uh, rose-colored glasses, I guess, for being able to draft decently well. And then, but also the rose-colored glasses of like, hey, you're 8-1. If you get that first round bye, you just got to win 2 games. You can win two. You've won 8 games with the roster that you have already. You just got to win two. You know, in 16 and 17 that you could win without using those picks and then draft rookies to then be even better. Because you have a great wide receiver and tight end room. Um so yeah. I would probably just keep going. Or you could do the same thing with the quarterback position. To then go, can you use one of those picks and go get a Jordan Love type of player or a Dak Prescott type of player? Um instead my final advice, I guess, would be just don't use both of them for one player specifically. Try to see if you can get multiple players for those picks if you are going to sell those picks. So hopefully that was a good answer for you, Matthew. If you have any other questions, absolutely let me know. But hopefully that was a good enough answer. Do, 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 do. High value team not making the 25 playoffs. Do I try to use my value all tied up in young wide receiver to get top producing running backs and wide receivers in 2026? Um, do I try to use my value tied up in young wide receivers to get top producing? I would say no for the running back position, especially not right now. Um, and I mean, if you're doing 2-for-1 trade ups, like you want to use Hunter and Worthy to get a better wide receiver, like Pickens could go somewhere and be like tremendous because he's a free agent at the end of the year. I'm not like actively trying to trade away Malik Neighbors. I'm not actively trying to trade away Emeka Ibuka. Like my answer is sure, but like for what purpose? You know what I mean? Especially right now, like you're not making the 25 playoffs. And it's not like any of the players that you have right now are like going to lose value in the offseason. If anything, Hunter's only going to gain value in the offseason. Pickens could only gain value in the offseason potentially. depending on where he signs. Like if Pickens signs in New England next year, oh my gosh. Neighbors is only going to gain value. Ibuka is not going to lose any value. Like there's no real reason I think to move on from any of these guys other than just making your roster like sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, make your roster better, I guess is the answer. I wouldn't do it at running back, but at wide receiver for sure. Is Brissett a sneaky buy for beyond this year? Just a short term fill in? He's just a short term fill in. He's been a backup for a reason for the majority of his career, and this is just no different. I mean, this is just the same as him starting in place of Drake May last year. I think he's just a short term guy. He's going to go back to being a backup at the end of the year. Like, if you're asking in terms of like, is he the starter for Arizona next year or somewhere else? I highly doubt it. I mean, he is signed with them with the Cardinals for next year, but they can cut him to save $6 million. So I think he's just I think he's just a guy that we have for the rest of the year, essentially. Mariota, Rodgers, Brissett, bench one. Currently benching Brissett. That is the one that I would say to bench as well. Paulson does have Rodgers below Brissett, which I do kind of get. But I think I'm more scared of the Seahawks defense for Jacoby than I am the Chargers defense for Rodgers. Jacoby at least is going to chuck it a lot, but Rodgers probably will too. Personally, I would sit Brissett. Paulson tells you to sit Aaron Rodgers, so depends which one of us you like more. PPR, Horton or Washington? This is Parker Washington, easily. I'm not starting Torrey Horton with Rashid Shaheed there. And the fact that with Parker Washington, what he's been doing, I know like Jacoby's there now too, but I'd much rather play Parker Washington. And then what are you doing with Kyler between him and BJ Burrow being injured? I'm not sure how my team keeps winning. I think we kind of talked about Kyler a little bit earlier. I think you just kind of got to hold on to him and hope that he gets a starter job next year. Because like I mentioned that there are teams that could be willing to take a shot on a 1-year prove it deal that he could go to. And then we could maybe not like talk ourselves into Kyler being good again, but like, could he be productive in a different offense, just in like a fresh start, whether that's Pittsburgh, Cleveland, the Jets. I mean, Miami, do they move on from Tua then sign Kyler? I don't know. Vegas, like there's a handful of opportunities that are of teams that are gonna need quarterbacks. New Orleans, maybe. So I think you're just waiting to see if he gets a starting role next year. I mean, that's all you basically can do. I don't think there's really much of a difference between Kyler and like Anthony Richardson right now or Justin Fields, other than the fact that Kyler is a better talent than those two and probably has a better opportunity to be in a different situation next year, essentially, to grow out of that situation. But like I think you got to view them in the same. I don't want Kyler to the Steelers though. Oh, it's Malik Washington. My bad. Let me finish. I don't really want Kyler to the Steelers. Just because Kyler to the Steelers would signify that they just don't want to. I mean, I've already known this, but it's just a continuation of them like just being good enough and not willing to tear it down. And it's just so frustrating as a Steelers fan because Kyler could be fine next year. He could be the same thing that Aaron Rodgers is right now. And we could go, 9-8, 8-9, whatever it is, and just be the exact same team. I don't think that would be beneficial for Kyler. I don't know if that'd be that's definitely not beneficial for Pittsburgh, but there's at least from a fantasy or dynasty standpoint, there is that opportunity that Kyler is a starter for somebody next year. Now back to this. Sorry, you said it was Malik Washington. I assumed it was Parker Washington. I would still start Malik Washington over Torrey Horton. And Paulson does have Torrey Horton above. But it's not by much. Horton's at 40. Washington's at 46. I also don't think Seattle needs to throw much against Arizona, and I think Miami needs to throw a lot against Buffalo. So I think I would start. I think Washington, especially in a PPR league, Horton can make bigger plays, but I think Washington has a better odds of getting 4 or 5 receptions. He's also going to get a little bit of a rushing floor, maybe. Maybe has 1 or 2 carries for an extra point or 2. I would still start Malik Washington, but Paulson also says Horton on that one. 28 first for Darnold. I'll take Darnold in this one over a 28 first. PPR two tight end premium, Otten or Kamara. It's Otten. I don't think you can play Kamara, especially in a 2 tight end premium. I'll play Cade Otten without Godwin again. Was offered Jaden Daniels for Sam Darnold in 2 firsts. Should I do this? I'm probably the favorite to win this year, worst second favorite, and this could potentially cost me a title if Daniels is out for the year. Who are your other quarterbacks? They're both 2028. Oh, man, that makes me want to take Daniels. Who are your other quarterbacks other than Darnold? Sure. I hate 1-for-1, same position, same tier trades, so I just don't see the point of trading Jefferson for CeeDee Lamb. If this is redraft, Lamb probably has better odds of redraft next for the rest of the season just because having a better quarterback, but I don't see the point in trades like this, to be honest with you. So sure. You have Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, and Jacoby Brissett. I would take Jaden Daniels. The fact that it's 2028 firsts makes me want to take Jaden Daniels so much. I'm not really concerned about the injuries piling up, like you mentioned. This elbow one was so weird. That's such a fluke injury that I'm not worried about that at all. The other ones are just soft tissue injuries, sure, but that can happen on anybody. Like Lamar's dealt with injuries from like 2021 to 2023 or whatever. And then he's been an MVP candidate for 2 years. So, and he's had injuries again this year. So it's like, are you worried about Lamar's injuries? Or are you not worried about Lamar's injuries? Because I think if you're not worried about Lamar's injuries, I wouldn't be worried about Daniels' injuries either. That's just me. And the fact that it's 2028 firsts, I would take Jaden Daniels. You've got it locked down with Josh Allen. RG3 had a horrendously awful knee injury that absolutely derailed his career. Daniels has not had that. Daniels has been much closer to Lamar and his injuries than RG3. And they're also like the news this morning is saying that like Daniels might be back this year, which I think is crazy, but he could be. I don't think that's really impactful for you for fantasy. I would also shut him down if I was Washington. They're not making the playoffs, but they're saying like they're not putting him on IR. So, I mean, if he's back in week 14 or 15, you have Jaden Daniels, but then you have Trevor Lawrence, you got Jacoby Brissett, and yeah, you could win 2 more championships before you even use those 28 picks. One of them still being this year. Like Allen's going to lock you down so hard at the quarterback spot that just having a player like Trevor Lawrence versus Sam Darnold might not be a major difference, right? Like you were starting Darnold every single week, and yeah, he had a spike week this past week. But Trevor Lawrence has had spike weeks. And that's where I'm saying like your biggest worry is like losing the title this year. I don't think you would. Right now, Sam Darnold is the QB 13, averaging 17.8 fantasy points per game. This is just using Fantasy Pros' generic fantasy scoring. Darnold is the QB 13, averaging 17.8 fantasy points per game. Trevor Lawrence is the QB 15, averaging 17.4 fantasy points per game. You are losing zero point 0.4 fantasy points per game, moving from Darnold to Trevor Lawrence as your QB2. Not to mention that you have Josh Allen, who's averaging damn near 24 fantasy points a game right now as your QB1. So there's no difference between Darnold and Trevor Lawrence to me. Like Darnold had 28 fantasy points this past week. Trevor Lawrence had 22. The other week, the Darnold had 28 points. That same week, Lawrence had 27. And then Darnold's other 20-point game, Darnold had 20. Trevor Lawrence had 19.2. Trevor Lawrence's week, he had another 20 bomb. He had 21.2. Darnold that week had 17.8. So it's just here. We can look at we'll look at strength of schedule. Strength of schedule. Seattle has the third worst strength of schedule for the remaining of the year. Jacksonville has the fourth worst. So their schedule is identical as well. So yeah, moving like I would make this deal for Jaden Daniels. And you're not going to lose a championship because of it, just because you're going from Darnold to Trevor Lawrence. They're the exact same quarterback. They both even had their bye weeks in the same week. That's how insanely similar they are right now. Both their teams just traded for a wide receiver at the deadline. Both their teams have a running back by committee. You know, ETN's a little less. ETN's not as committee, but I would take Jaden Daniels. And then you can still win with Trevor Lawrence for sure. I don't think you're going to lose because you aren't starting Sam Darnold. Is a late first worth less this year than others? Draft seems very top heavy. I think theoretically it does, but I would say no. That like if this question is being asked in the context of I'm a contender, I'm top 3 in my league, so my pick theoretically is going to be the 110, 111, 112. Is that pick worth less this year such that I traded away for a lower level player to help me compete? And in that context, the answer is no. I would never trade away a first round pick for a player less worthy of that first round pick just because the class is deemed worse, quote unquote, worse than other classes. And BTJ is out, so T-Law will complete more passes. They have Parker Washington as their wide receiver 1, so of course he's fine. I do think the consensus is that a late first this year is worth less than others. But again, in the context of like, should I trade my late first because it's worth less for a lesser player to help me compete this year? That answer is no. Is the player or the rookie that you're going to be drafting with your 110, 111, 112, is that rookie a worse prospect than other late first prospects? That answer could be yes. You might be drafting a worse prospect, but I would tell you that still may not, like, we might just get that wrong. They might just be a good prospect, or they might be in a good situation. It could be a bad prospect, but there's bad prospects in every single class. The players that we overhype, you know, like Keon Coleman. I still don't even think Xavier Worthy was that great of a prospect. Matthew Golden was a first round pick. There's players like that every single year that we just hype up, or the NFL hypes up, and they're just not that great of a prospects anyway. So I would say yes and no, but I would especially say no in regards to do not trade away your late first round pick for a lesser player to help you compete just in the name of competing and just in the name of, well, this rookie isn't going to be as great because the class isn't as great. Tracks. You waited till the very end, huh, to come in here? You know, there was a point at halftime, where the thought entered my brain for about half a second. It entered my brain. What if they pulled this off? I thought it, and I immediately went, "LOL, you're dumb," and I shot it back out there. But I had the thought. I had the thought of like we are playing Ohio State decently well right now to the fact that we're within 3 points at halftime. And then so I thought it, and then I threw it out immediately because I was like, no, you're being dumb. And then you guys promptly scored 2 touchdowns in the first like 10 minutes after the half. So I was like, yep, there it is. So I knew they were gonna win. I knew that they were gonna I knew Ohio State was gonna win. I knew Penn State was gonna lose bad. It is what it is. Back to back natty. I don't know about that one. We'll see. We'll see. I say it's possible, but it's hard to win a national championship in college. Or maybe it's hard if I'm if you're Penn State, it's hard to win a national. Maybe it's not hard for Ohio State. It hasn't been hard for Ohio State. We'll see. We'll see. Rebuilding a dynasty team, would you trade Achane and Devonta Smith for Ibuka and a 26 first? Yes. I would take the first over Smitty, and I would take Ibuka over Achane. Boom, 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 boom. Done. Easy. Give me Ibuka and the 26 first. Redraft defense, Rams or Bucks? I would probably pick the Rams, but I like the Buccaneers schedule for the remainder of the year. Where's Tampa? Where's Tampa? What the heck? Oh, there. Their schedule for the end of the year. So they get New England, then Buffalo, then the Rams. But then from weeks 13 on, they get the Cardinals, Saints, Falcons, Panthers, Dolphins. So like they're a good defense to still have, I think, from a redraft standpoint. It's going to suck over the next couple of weeks, and I would not start them this week. I'd rather start the Rams. I like how you just said versus Christian McCaffrey. But I would start the Rams defense this week. But I do like the Buccaneers as a defense to have for the remainder of the year, from week 13 on, essentially. Better late than never, Christian. What's going on? What's going on? Who do you want as your new head coach? Honestly, I've seen people say it, like I've seen Penn State fans being like, "That would be so dumb." I would be totally happy with Urban Meyer. I also think it'd be funny, but I would be totally happy with Urban Meyer. I know everybody's like, "Oh, we should hire Brian Hartline. He's never leaving Ohio State." I'd be totally fine with Brian Hartline though too. I never wanted Matt Rule. Never, ever, ever did I want Matt Rule. So I was so happy that it got extended. I would have taken Cignetti, but I knew that wasn't actually going to happen. He was obviously my top choice, but I knew we weren't going to get Cignetti. I'm trying to remember the name that popped up the other day that I was like, oh, that would actually be a good name that I didn't even consider who that was. I can't remember who it is. I've seen some of my friends have been like, "Oh, could you get Lane Kiffin?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I would love Lane Kiffin, but that's not realistic." um, I would love Joe Brady, but I don't think that would happen either. I don't think he'd leave the NFL. I think he's got better odds of getting an NFL coaching job, head coaching job this go around. So there'd be no reason for him to drop down to college. Like honestly, like I'd be totally fine with Urban Meyer. I'll take Urban Meyer. I guess would be like my number one on the realistic board. Um, I don't remember his name. I don't know why I can't remember his name. Duke's coach, who was our former DC or whoever. I don't know why I can't. Manny Diaz. He's been linked, but I don't really want him. I can't remember who that other coach was. Hold on. I think I know who tweeted it. Hold on. Brent Key, Georgia Tech. The same guy also is like, would we take the Northwestern head coach? I would take both those guys. I do not want Luke Fickell. I would take Luke Fickell if you paid out Franklin's buyout. Oh man. I do not want Luke Fickell. That is so funny though. But yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to be disappointed by whoever they get, and it's just going to be more of the same. So it is what it is. Ibuka or Nico in a 28 first. I think just the fact that it's 28 first, I would keep Ibuka or take Ibuka. Yeah. Dynasty Superflex as a frisky pretender with 4 quarterbacks. Who would you trade? Would you trade away Love for Pittman, an early second, and Mac Jones? Need more flex production. Thanks, dude. Yeah, I think Christian asked a good question. Who are your other quarterbacks? I'd be curious on them because then you're also going to be adding Mac Jones. So then you still have 4 quarterbacks, but I would take Love over Pittman in a second, just in Dynasty. So I think my answer is no. Oh, wait. Is this hold on, Kevin. Hold on, Kevin. We had another I can't remember if it was you, Kevin, who said it. Of the situation of like Love was your QB, Bo Nix, T-Law, and Purdy. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't do it with Love. I agree with Christian. If you could do that with Lawrence, I would rather do this for Lawrence, even if that means you don't get Mac Jones or whatever. Can you just trade away Lawrence for Pittman in a second? I would much rather do that. Or Pittman and Mac Jones. That's fine too. I would keep Trevor Lawrence. I would keep Jordan Love in this trade over. I would not do this trade with Love in there, but I would do it with T-Law. I don't think I would do it with Purdy either. T-Law is the main guy that I would do it for. Christian's down bad for Superflex this week with Dak on bye. Dare I start Davis Mills? Who are your other options? I don't think Mills has a terrible game against the Jaguars, but I also don't think he's a guy that you're going to be happy starting. Like he might just get 12. Like if he had 200 passing yards and a pick, that is like 7 fantasy points. Which technically, from like an NFL standpoint, that's not like bad. But yeah, you know. Or go Goddard or Tez. Ooh. Yeah, I'm not playing Davis Mills in this. I think Goddard's a good play. If you needed the upside, I think Tez has the upside. If you just wanted a better floor than Davis or Tez can give you, then I would play Goddard, especially in a premium. But if you needed the upside, I think the upside play is Tez. I would not play Davis Mills over either one of those two. And yes, Tez is the most fun. It should be a fun game. I'm hoping that Bucks Patriots game, I think, could be a really, really fun, like the 55, 60 plus point game. And, I think Tez could be a solid contributor there, but I think offers the upside. But like if Goddard, especially in a time in premium, maybe if he catches a touchdown, kind of like he has been for most of the year, I think Goddard's more of the floor play. Need points. I think I'd rather start Tez, to be honest with you. He is more fun, huh? Let's see. Oop. Paulson has Goddard flex 66, and he's got Tez flex 63. I think I'd play Tez. I think it's more fun. PPR Jennings, Hendo, Devonta, or Shakir. Start two. Have Jennings and Henderson in currently. I would probably. Hmm. Henderson's in there for sure. I'd rather, and Devonta, I think, is the lesser of the three personally. Like, I'd play Shakir over Devonta Smith as well. Do I play Jennings over Shakir? Jennings is flex 56. Henderson's flex 43. Devonta's flex 40. So right now, Paulson would say Devonta and Henderson. And Shakir, if I can spell, is flex 52. So Paulson would say Smith and Henderson with Shakir as the second option instead of Jennings. I don't know if I love Devonta Smith, though. AJ Brown's going to be back this week, too. If AJ Brown didn't play, I would play Devonta Smith. But I think with AJ Brown back, I would probably play Juwan Jennings and Henderson like you have in there. I think I agree with you. If Chino can produce against the Jazz, Mills probably can too. The difference is, well, I guess Mills has Nico. So unless Nico's going for 103 like Bowers did, like Gino didn't really do anything. It was all Brock Bowers. So I guess if Mills just did that to Nico, that could work. Which, please give me some Nico production, man. It'd be incredible. PBR Superflex halftime and premium trade Loveland for a 26 first. I would for an early, and I would not for a mid to late. But if it was an early first, I would. I'm fine with it. Rebuilding team, PPR Superflex. I have 6. Jeez. 26 first, 6 seconds, 6 thirds. McCarthy, Ibuka, Hunter, and Devonta Smith. Are you making all those picks? Probably. I probably am. Just draft the rookies. Again, this goes back to, like, I think people just try to outsmart themselves with what to do. What's the optimal play with all these picks? Just draft the rookies. I would just draft them. If you get better offers, but I wouldn't go out and seek offers necessarily. Like, unless if you wanted to try to like buy BTJ for like one of the first and seconds just to see, you could do that, but you have Travis Hunter. I would probably just make all the picks. I think there's just more upside in hitting on all the rookies and having as many darts as possible. Any sneakiest targets to trade for now whose values could increase due to free agency or changing situation in 2026? Tyler Algier, Tyjae Spears, Rashad White, Braylon Allen are the 4 that I would look at the running back position specifically. Brian Robinson too, maybe. B-Rob, Algier, and Rashad White are free agents. No. Yes. Rashad White is a free agent, I think, yeah. I know for a fact that Algier and B-Rob are free agents, and Rashad White is a free agent too. Spears could be Pollard can be cut to save like $7 million. So Spears could see an increase if Pollard is cut. And Braylon could, if Reese walks in free agency and Braylon comes back from the injury, Braylon maybe could be the RB1 for the Jets next year. I feel like I'm not as in on the who the wide receiver and tight end free agents are. Why doesn't it like give me? What the heck? What are we doing, Spotrack? It's not giving me the data. The page is just empty. Pickens, I mean, he's going to get paid. This is saying Cortland Sutton could be a free agent. Is that true? No, he signed. ChatGPT, you lied. Or I guess Google AI lied. Dimey Brown's a free agent. Jacoby, Juwan Jennings. See, Ricky Pearsall, man. I like me some Ricky Pearsall. Wandale's a free agent, huh? Interesting. Who's a free agent at tight end? Kelsey Andrews, so that's a likely. Njoku, so Fannin. Higby, so Terrence Ferguson, maybe. Michael Mayer becomes a free agent at the end of 2026. So I like Michael Mayer too. But I like those running backs I think could be really interesting. In Algier, White, Spears, Braylon, B Rob. I think would be the interesting guys. Has Sutton fallen off? I don't think he's fallen off. I think he goes as Bo Nix goes. Essentially, like if you look at the game logs, every single week that Bo Nix has thrown for essentially over 200 yards, Sutton has also gone over like 60, 70, 80, 90 yards. And then the weeks that Bo Nix does not do well, Sutton doesn't do well. So I don't think it's really a Cortland Sutton issue. I think it's just the Bo Nix issue. And Denver's offense is really weird, as you mentioned. That I just think it's not a Sutton issue. It's an offensive weirdness issue. And yes, last night was a massively gross game. I saw somebody tweet out there like, so nice of the NFL to so nice of the NFL to play a August preseason game on during week 10. So that's essentially what we got. It was absolutely disgusting. And yeah, I am becoming more skeptical of Bo Nix. Like I had him as a top 10 dynasty quarterback in my rankings, and I'm wondering if he's going to be the one guy that falls in that tier. Like I could see myself liking obviously Caleb by the end of the year over Bo Nix. Love over Nix, Purdy over Nix. I mean, if you'd rather have as a contender, I'd rather have Dak for sure. Um, I think Bo Nix could be one of the guys that I could see him being at like QB 15 or 16 in my rankings by the end of the year. Kind of like where Stroud was. Not to say that he's having as bad of a year as CJ Stroud, but I remember back in the offseason, I said that of the rookie quarterbacks this year, the one that was the closest to his ceiling in terms of value, and the one that I was the most scared of having a sophomore slump year was Bo Nix. And I got flamed in the. I remember saying that, and I remember the comments, a couple of the comments that I got in response to that. But I mean, so far it's kind of pretty much been true that he's. It certainly hasn't been Drake May. Daniels, maybe if you want to quantify the slump, but he's been injured. So obviously he hasn't lived up to his sophomore expectations, but he's been hurt. Bo Nix has not lived up to sophomore expectations in the way that Stroud has not lived up to sophomore expectations, and they both were playing the whole time. And yeah, it's obviously not Drake May. Penix didn't have massive expectations really coming in. JJ McCarthy also got hurt again, but looked decent in most situations. It's been Nix. You think Sean Payton is overrated? He maybe could be. I think he also tries to outsmart himself too. I think he just tries too hard sometimes. Hey man, this is my team for week 10. What do you think? May, Cook, Judkins, Jason, Ibuka, McBride, Wandale. Wow. I think you've got a pretty great team there. Especially the fact that your starting lineup is pretty incredible. With like two top 15 running backs, we'll say Judkins is top 15, Cook is top 6 or 7. May is an every week starter. Jason and Ibuka top 12. McBride's 2. You've got Rome on the bench for Wandale, Pierce on the bench, Jennings on the bench, Caleb on the bench, Henderson on the bench. Corum is a high profile handcuff. Woody. This is a great team. And I would probably play Rome over Wandale in terms of like start sits this week. But this is a pretty great team. I think you've started pretty much everybody. I mean, you're never going to sit Cook or JSN or Abuka or McBride. And I would play May over Caleb. I'd probably play Rome over Wando, though. That would be my one change. Let's see. Paulson has Rome at wide receiver 24, and he's got Wandale. Oh, he's got Wandale at 19. So I apologize. Paulson would have Wandale ahead. They both have great matchups, though. And I do wonder, Rome might get squeaky wheeled into a bigger role this week. I do think Wandale has a nicer floor, but I think Rome has a much higher upside. So it depends on what you need. You might not need upside with the rest of the team that you have. Paulson would say to play Wandale over Rome, but I think Rome has a good week this week. Or yeah, if you had two flexes, then you could just play both of them and you don't have to worry about it. I do like that. I like having more starters, especially depending on how many teams are in your league. So like we have a 10-team home redraft league where we start I think 10 people. 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flex. Yeah, 10. And then we also have a home redraft league that, depending on the people that join any given year or can even make the draft, is between 10 to 12. But we only start like 8. So it's like I got people on my bench that I'm like, I should be starting these guys because of our dynasty league, but I don't like it. I like more flex spots. Yeah, do something like that. Super flex, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, flex. We also start kickers and defenses though, so ick. I was surprised how low you dropped AJ Brown in your rankings this week. Thought you were an AJ guy. I am an AJ guy. I am nervous about the situation though. But it's also like, if you remove the name AJ Brown, like he didn't have a tremendous season last year. He's not having a tremendous season this year and is now 28 years old, right? Oh, where's AJ Brown? 28.4. So he's going to be turning 29 heading into next year, coming off of 2 kind of declining seasons. Like, just removing the name AJ Brown profile wise, that just doesn't sound phenomenal, you know? But I mean, I fully still believe that if they just decided to use AJ Brown like he was freaking AJ Brown, he's still AJ Brown. They just don't use him, or they don't use him consistently. Like, he's had tremendous weeks and he's still great, but from a dynasty standpoint, it just becomes harder and harder to really believe in a guy at a high enough value like that. Because like I said, like 2 kind of meh seasons, 29 years old next year. That ain't it. Like, there's really not much of the only difference between him and DJ Moore right now is that we like the Eagles offense more. We like Jalen Hurts more than Caleb, and AJ Brown's just a better talent. But like, there's really not much of a difference situationally between the two. And they're the same age. Like Sutton, with how Sutton's producing right now, he's 30. So like, and he's still wide receiver 35. Like, I bet you Brown just is going to keep falling down the rankings until he's, Sutton or Mike Evans or Terry McLaurin or somebody like that, essentially. All right. Seems like we've gotten to the end of the questions. Only a 2-hour Friday AMA, huh? I like it, honestly. I'm getting a little bit more time to work on my market system updates. Ferguson, Gasden, and Loveland. What kind of return should I look to get if I move Ferguson? 10 team, half PPR tight end premium dynasty league. I think you probably are just getting like a second is where we're at. I don't think there's anything too tremendous in value. It's just like a second, or it's like a wide receiver that's like a second, or um a running back that like a starting running back who's good but not like great, you know. I would say like a second round pick is pretty much where you're at. I say that we're near the end of the show, and then 5 people ask questions. Any specific trade strategy you use after the fantasy playoffs and before the rookie drafts? Um, no, not necessarily. I would say it's not like I have like this thing is incredible because I think I spend so much time diving into the rookie draft and the rookies, and then I want to see how free agency shakes out. So I feel like that time of year is more of like I don't really want to trade because I'm so scared that I'm going to make the wrong move and then it's just all going to be thrown away by free agency in the draft. So I'm more like not trading in between that at the start of like the off season because I want to digest everything that happened, really dive into the rookie class, see what goes on in free agency, and then, start to push for the next season. So I guess my trade strategy is almost like I really kind of don't. I also take a break. I like taking a little bit of a break as well, just to kind of reset everything. And I think that helps also then focus energy into the next season. Draft season personally is my favorite time of year. I love analyzing rookies. I love talking about rookies. I love doing rookie drafts. I love the NFL draft. I love all of that. So it's my personal favorite time of the year. Um, and I think it's just because I don't make as many moves because I'm so invested into understanding the rookie class and the players. But I also think for good reason too. Like I don't want to make moves that are then going to be impacted a week later because of free agency or somebody gets traded or the NFL draft kills them. This isn't a bad idea either. My best friend does almost the exact same thing. He doesn't look at anything going on in rookies because he gets tired of it. Like we hear rookies in January, February, March, April, that he gets really tired of it. And has flamed out quickly to where he did this last year, and like we got into like April, like early April, and he was like, dude, I'm itching for trades for the NFL draft, all this kind of stuff. He loved it. It was all in again. And it's because he took that break as a dynasty player and not a content creator, but being more of like a consumer and just a regular dynasty player. He took that break and it was like he thought it was like the greatest thing ever. So I would advise that as well. I do think taking a break is important, especially after the grind of doing this every single week. Not only from my point of view, but from y'all's point of view too. I would rather have Tedero and McMillan. It's close though, but from a dynasty standpoint, I'd rather have T Mac still. Trade Rome, Bucky, White for Swift in London. Need an upgrade at wide receiver. No, I would take Rome, Bucky, and White. Uh, yeah, I would still rather have Rome, Bucky, and White, mostly for Bucky, for him to come back this year and still be good. And the fact that you got Rashad White on top of it to spell you while Bucky's, I'd rather have Rome and Bucky still. Played RJ Harvey, Dobbins in my running back slots and got disappointed. I got to pick one: DJ Moore or Keenan or Manungai in my flex. Full PBR, and then Jacoby Brissett or Justin Fields. We gotta go for a little bit of upside here, huh? I would play Kyle Manungai in my flex, and then I would do Brissett over Fields. We also don't even know if Fields is going to be the starter necessarily, but I think he probably is. But I would play Brissett Fields against Cleveland. Ugh. I play Brissett and I would play Kyle Monangai. My last question: pick the one player in all of Dynasty Fantasy that you think is the most undervalued. That is the biggest buy right now. It probably is Fields starting. I would imagine it is, but then him against Cleveland. The biggest value in all of Dynasty that we should be buying right now. Rico, league winner. There you go. I would say Jalen Waddle. Oh, Kyle Williams. Hey, dude, if he does something this week with Kayshon Boutte out, I'm gonna be ecstatic, bro. I'm gonna be absolutely ecstatic. But I'm going to say Jalen Waddle. With the secondary being potentially George Pickens. Now, Pickens has gotten a lot more value and expensive because of what he did without CeeDee Lamb, but I also think that showcases. Obviously, we knew his talent while he was in Pittsburgh, and I was trying to buy him last year while he was in Pittsburgh. Then he's been great this year. Now he's about to be a free agent and could go somewhere incredible. So I would say Pickens and Waddle, I think, are the two that I'm most excited about. That I also think Waddle's really undervalued. I think is the wide receiver 21. From a quarterback standpoint, I still think it's Brock Purdy. Not to say that he's going to go like nuclear or anything like that, but I still think that people just don't respect Brock Purdy. And have kind of forgotten about him because he hasn't played. Those would be my answers. 7 and 2 send Rico, White, and Harrison for Chase, Hampton, and Woody. I think you won this one. Getting Jamar Chase, great. Hampton, yeah, I think this is great. I mean, just give me Jamar Chase. Chase is now your one. You got London and Nico, Saquon and Kyron until Hampton gets back. Oh my gosh, man. Javonte in there too. Yeah. Just to reassure, since it's that close, I have Brissett, Fields, and Mariota. It's start 2, and I already have Hurts in and Daniels. I'd rather have Mariota. I would pick Mariota as your quarterback over Brissett and Fields. So I'm glad you threw that in there. So, but yeah, I would rather have Mariota. Yes, I would trade Loveland for Waddle. If you could trade AJ Brown for Pickens, that would be phenomenal. Paulson has Mariota as his highest ranked as well. I mean, he's got Brissett and Mariota next to each other, but I would rather have Mariota against Detroit at home. Better rushing upside, I think. Better defensive matchup. I do Mariota. And then, yeah, I would take Waddle over Loveland. Yeah, I think that's it. All right. Well, I'm going to get out a little early then. A 2-hour, 15-minute stream instead of a 3-hour one. So this is where we're going to end it. I appreciate everybody for hanging out for the past over 2 hours. If you have any more questions, I would have McBride in this one. Just give me the one better tight end. But if you have any other questions, you can drop them into the comments of this video just on YouTube, like after the fact, like a normal YouTube video or any other videos on the DLF channel. It's me that answers all of them. If you guys have any, I mentioned this and I don't think anybody said anything, but if you have any different names for the marker system, if you think you think something's cool, to name it something different than the marker system, or if you just like the marker system, let me know. I have been thinking on that as a 2026 rebrand. Anyway, that's not super important, but I appreciate everybody for hanging out. Thank you to those of you who had super chats And yes, like and subscribe and all of that stuff as well. All the YouTube things. We'll be back next week for the week 11 Friday AMA. I'm gonna have a marker system update. Um, I'm scared saying this because then I'm gonna have to do it, but I'm working through updating the marker system, and my plan is to have that for this week, just like how this past week was rankings week. This next week, I believe I'm going to go through updating my marker system with a really early 2026 preview, so we can start getting a handle on how this class looks. So then I can stop hypothesizing about what I think about this class and actually give a little bit of a data analysis behind it, especially before you guys have any trade deadlines and stuff and you're trading away or for 2026 picks as contenders or rebuilders, so that you slightly have a better understanding of the possible rookies in those range. And then we're going to dive into them in December and stuff too, in January, and of course, and then combine at the end of February, all the great stuff for rookie season coming up. That'll really finalize all that data. But now that we have a decent number of games for the college season so far this year, I think a rankings update, not a ranking, a marker update should be in the cards. All right. Wait, you're actually good. Thank you. And hopefully I'm playing some Fortnite tonight, man. I haven't played the Simpsons season yet, but hopefully I'm playing some Fortnite. I heard it's really fun, but also super sweaty. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. I've never watched the Simpsons, but I heard it's really fun. So hopefully that's in the cards for me personally tonight. But I appreciate everybody for hanging out. Good luck in all of your matchups this week. I hope you win all of them in redraft, or win all the ones in Dynasty as well that you want to win, or just continue losing if you're rebuilding. Continue getting that 1.01. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend, everybody. And I'll catch you guys in the next video, the next AMA for week 11. We're going to play some Fortnite. It is fun. Let's go. All right, guys. Appreciate y'all. Later.